welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. We are blessed today to have with us the amazing Deborah Drummond. Deborah, welcome.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I know we've just been chatting and you've had a busy day, and I know that things are very busy your end. So we're very blessed that you have chosen to give us some time. So thank you. I'm going to introduce you, Deb. So Deborah has been in the health and wellness field for over 30 years. She's a pioneer in bringing the idea of holistic natural medicine into the marketplace. And with that, I know you formulated lots and lots, I think hundreds of natural products. You've owned a private health practice and you're very passionate. I know you've done lots of things, but right now you're very passionate and knowledgeable about the study of age reversal and the health of the cells. And I'd love for us to talk a bit about this. I know that you're an entrepreneur as well, a long-time entrepreneur, and you're very well known in the circle of women in business. And you recently told me you've just been nominated for Canadian. Do you want to help me out so I don't get it wrong?
You want me to help you out there? Yeah. So it's the Royal Bank of Canada Women of Entrepreneur Awards. Yes. So grateful.
Yeah, that's amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Let us know if we can all vote for you. That's very exciting. So you're a busy woman, you're a woman in demand. And I know at the moment, amidst lots of other things, you talk a lot about the brain health being sexy. And I like that. So let's get into that today. And I'm going to start by asking you, what on earth brought you into this? How did you get here?
Wow. So thank you so much for having me first of all over again. What got me here? So what got me probably involved in holistic medicine to begin with, right? So what got me involved in holistic medicine was very different than what got me involved in the brain. Interesting. Two different aspects of the brain. So my background, for most people that know me, they know I have a serious addiction. I should really be going to somebody for it in the area of music. I absolutely love music, and I used to cocktail waitress back in the day, and I loved it, and I loved bands, and I love music, and I'm a fashion person and art and all of that, and I'm just very creative. But you know, there comes a time when you kind of take a look at the environment that you're spending the majority amount of your time in, and you're like, not quite sure this is going to serve me for the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life. So I have what I call a spiritual awakening. It really was coming home from a long night of having just the best time ever and dancing and kind of having this glimpse of, is this really where I want my life to go? And the answer was no.
Right.
And so I started to get involved and started to learn and study about psychology and metaphysics and alternative ways of thinking, and books kind of started to throw their way out at me. And I found myself in a career of massage and aromatherapy and Ayurveda. I mean, I literally went from one to the other fairly quickly. And so I found myself in love with, I enjoy people, and it's interesting because when I think about my dharma, where we think about what we're meant to do, people are like, what's your passion? What are you meant to do? I'm meant to serve people, because I was the happiest cocktail waitress on the planet. I was happy being in service. I just came to the place where I needed to shift that service to have a different impact. And so I fell in love with holistic healthcare, and then falling in love with the brain was a whole different ballgame. It really was a different ballgame.
Tell us about that, because that's what we're going to talk about today. Because this summit is all about taking people having, information, ideas, practical tips to take them to the next level. So wherever they feel that their limits stop, having a moment where they go, I've taken something from Deb, I've taken something from Dr. Joe, I've taken something to get me to the next level. So let's get into the brain and what got you there. I know it's a bit of an interesting story, how you stumbled across this thing and its use.
Yeah, absolutely. So in love with age reversal, right? And interestingly, so I fell into the world of holistic medicine, anatomy. Interestingly, in school, I used to draw in class, and I used to draw pieces of anatomy. So starts to make sense.
Right.
But I literally was lying in bed. Now, my daughter must have been about 12 years old, and I had been in the health field for quite a time. And my daughter had challenges with learning disabilities. Now, my daughter is now almost 28 years old. And so, when she was in grade 3 and was crying at night because she couldn't follow the same pace as the other kids in school, there wasn't a whole lot of diagnoses going on and understanding around going on. And there was a big ADHD thing going on. Like if your child had challenges, it was ADHD.
Yeah.
And so, so she had these, and it was, as a parent, I was at a loss. I had raised my children sugar-free and wheat-free and gluten-free and all of this. And, we were known as the hippies in the neighborhood because we didn't use a microwave. And I could tell you all of that, interesting experience. But it was just a struggle for her. And so, going and getting the testing done, and where were the challenges for her, and how can we adapt at school? And all of a sudden, it literally was one Sunday afternoon, I was lying in bed and I was watching PBS, one of my favorite shows. And that's when I first got introduced to brain health. And the gentleman that I was watching was Dr. Daniel Amen. And as he was talking, and my mouth was dropping because I had never seen it so, I don't know, so concise before, I called my daughter into my bedroom and I said, I want you to come watch this. Now, most 12-year-olds don't want to sit around and watch PBS. I'm just saying, I used to drag her to Antique Roadshow. That was as far as it went. So she came in and she started to watch, and she just stood, and then she sat down on my bed and she looked at me and she said, that's me. Like, that's me. And that started me studying deeper and trying to understand more around neuroscience and neural pathways and neurotransmitters and what fires and what doesn't fire. So really, like a lot of good stories, like a lot of good discoveries, it really came from a need to support my daughter.
Yeah. Which I think is a great story, because I think there's a lot of people who are watching who have children or know someone in their life who might be struggling, and that might be their entry road too, And even if it isn't, it's good to know that wherever we're at with our brain health, it can probably be improved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing. I think that was one of the reliefs that I had as a mother and also as a health practitioner, was when I was hearing things like, you can repair your brain. You can, like, and just discovering all of that and what it is that you could do. Now, at the time, I'm going to be honest. So that was 15 years ago, 17 years, something like that. There wasn't a lot there was some information, but from someone who's been in the study now for that length of time, and somehow ended up with a company that actually has discovered a brain supplement, which even brought brain into my life even more. And having a second child with a learning disability, I got blessed with 2, is that, the more you dig, the more you know that repair is possible. And I think what I'm kind of known for in the circuit, I teach brain health is sexy. And I really tell people smart is sexy. If you start to listen to people, they'll be like, I'm really drawn or attracted to people's intelligence. I think we're past the Photoshop era of our lives, where everybody needs to be Photoshopped, and they need to be, and that intelligence has a high regard in the world of even attractiveness, right? Yeah. And that's, not to deny the fact that people are attracted for all sorts of reasons, but that getting smart or getting smarter or repairing is relieving.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that as a general concept, and also to embody that and be, have enough information. So we often talk, Dr. Joe often talks about, we live in a world where information isn't good enough. It's not good enough to know the stuff. It's how do we know how do we now take that information and implement it? So for me, what's smart as well, which is the same thing as you're saying, is to be able to improve yourself. How do you improve yourself? Anybody who's evolving is attractive, right? Because you want to evolve, you want to learn more, you want to be the best you can be. So tell us about this. So I know that you're big on the supplements, but you're also big on the side of what can we do, and you've really dove into this area of brain aging reversal. So tell us about that and what you've discovered.
Absolutely. And like I was going to say, I think one of the things that people enjoy the most when I speak is I just take it and I really simplify it. Like, it's going to sound very elementary. I just want people to know that the impact is incredible, particularly when you do. I love, there's a gentleman that I follow and love. His name is Jeff Olson, and he's wrote a book called The Slight Edge. And the slight edge is taking a simple principle and adding to it and adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And we know when we chip away at something, right? We chip away at something, it gets better and easier and better and easier. And that's how I feel about the brain. Because we're not perfect. And there's going to be times where you're going to be under incredible duress. Hello, the world, the last while. And it's the bits and pieces. And for me, I feel great. I feel fantastic when someone says, I took that one piece of information and it really reduced my anxiety. It really reduced things that were happening. So let's talk about some of the simple things that people can do. And when I say simple, I do not want people to not think these are impactful, because when you apply that slight edge philosophy of just incorporating this into your life and adaptation, you're going to notice change. There's going to be, neuronal, how about this? How about neuronal happiness? I think I just coined a new phrase. How about neuronal happiness? I think I'm going to get some t-shirt. I'll get us a t-shirt and I'll send you one. Neuronal happiness.
Please. Yes, please. I was here when it was born.
There you go. So let's talk about some really simple, we all have heard things, but we haven't heard about them in relationship to brain health. So sleeping, right? People are they're like, I know I should sleep. It's good for me. But if I was to say to somebody, so it's good for you to sleep, why? Why is it good for you to sleep more? They'd be like, I don't know. It's kind of that thing that, my mom said that you cook the turkey at 350 degrees for 4 hours when I cook a turkey. And if I was to say why, they'd say, because that's what my mother told me, and so that's how I cook my turkeys. So one of the big things that people don't realize when they sleep is that these little cleaners go into your brain, and they literally clean the brain. It's like I always say, you get a free house cleaning if you go to sleep long enough, past that 6, 7, into that 6, 7, 8 hour, that your brain gets cleaned. It's like this little, I just think little cleaners go into your brain and make your brain so much more restored and clean and detoxified. When people say, I have a hard time sleeping, it can be due to a lot of things, but talking about sleeping and some of the things people can do, those slumber masks that, they see in the beauty magazine that they think, oh, it's just all about trying to look refreshed. It really isn't. It really is about allowing your brain to sleep and restore. It has to restore itself. Look at what we put our brain through. And don't even get me going on the units that we're talking on right now, right? The blue light that comes on and what's happened. In terms of like our attention span is now, like Eamon says, below the attention span of a goldfish, but it's very, very low due to technology and games and those kind of things. So sleeping, let's get back to that. Sleeping is if you can let your brain restore from everything that it does during the day. So do your very best to hit that 6, 7, 8 hour state of sleeping. Dark curtains. Yeah. Now, this is funny. When I mention dark curtains to people, they're like, dark curtains? I'm like, have you ever been to a hotel and you put the dark curtains on and you sleep through the alarm the next day and you sleep through noon and you feel like you've been in another place and you come up and you almost don't remember where you are? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's how thirsty your brain is to restore itself. Dark curtains are incredible. They're really incredible. So dark, and I'm a big fan of aromatherapy. I love aromatherapy. Now, other than the fact that I am an aromatherapist, chamomile oil, lavender oil, rubbing that on your pillow. I'm helping people sleep at night. Those are some techniques, say sleep masks, dark curtains, just knowing that it's important to sleep, and try to sleep as much as you can. And then using aromatherapy, to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep is so important. So important. We can get on to brain chemistry of why that's important, but we won't. But tell us about age reversal, because this is something you're specializing in now, right? The brain,
right?
Because it's a huge problem in the world at the moment. There's a huge amount of brain deterioration in older age. And I know I've heard you talk about, you know, why don't we do something about it now to help us to stack the odds in our direction that we won't go down that line, which in all, I don't know the percentage, but do you know the percent of people who, you know, with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all of these brain deterioration?
Right. So what I know in terms of Alzheimer's, due to the last study that I took a look at, was that basically 50% for people over 75% will have some form of neuronal deterioration, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's does not show, the first sign of Alzheimer's does not show sometimes 25 to 40 years after it's actually started in the body. Wow. And so, no, I talk about age reversal. I talk about it for a number of not just a number of reasons, but things like anti-aging, whether it's the skin or the body or the brain. I talk a lot about the mitochondria. The mitochondria is this gorgeous, beautiful lung in the cell, you know, optimizing your mitochondria and turning the clock back on your cells, making them fresh, making them healthy. I mean, we have billions of cells in our body, and allowing them to be the receptors of the nutrition that we need them to be. When it comes to the brain, one of the most phenomenal things that I discovered, or that I was taught by Jeffrey and Maxwell Stock at Signum Biosciences out of Princeton University. This is where I learned this. So this is theirs, not mine. But I've grabbed onto it and I love it. And I share it as much as I can. And we have these microtubulars in our brain. And if people just think of that as a rope, right? Just think of it as a rope. And this rope, if you know anything about ropes, they start to fray. You know, they start to fray. The importance of this is that it's really the charging cord. It's the charging cord to your neurons. So if you think about why my phone is plugged in while I'm talking to you, because I don't want the battery to drop. I want my phone working at its optimum. Well, this microtubular that is responsible for charging our neurons. So we know that our neurons need to connect. It's called synaptic connection. It's a little problem with that. I don't know. So, you know, there's always a word you have a problem with. That's mine. Synaptic connection. And this is your memory and your concentration and your focus and your clarity and your brain stamina. I talk to people about brain stamina. They're like, oh, I'm like, do you know what I'm talking about? And they're like, kinda. And people don't recognize. I always say to them this, depends how old they are. Okay. I'm like, so do you remember in your 20s when you used to like go to school and study all night or party all night, depending on whose parent, you know, who your parents were, you know, when you stayed up all night and you got up the next day and you went to work and you hung out with your friends and you went for lunch, or you came home at 7 o'clock at night and your girlfriend's like, hey, let's go grab dinner. And you're like, absolutely. And you change your clothes and you're having dinner at 7:38 at night, compared to the time where you're coming in at 7 or 7:30. And the only thing that you want to do is shut it down because your brain has had enough. Or you'll see people, they'll do like this. They'll do like this. Or they start to get brain tired and their body still could do a little bit, but that's the stamina of the brain, keeping it really, you know, our brain is meant to be super turned on, you know, like turned on and kind of electrified. Anyways, so when you talk about prevention, all the things that I talk about, whether it's hydrating the brain or sleeping or whatever it is, you know, not eating sugar. You know, I just lost half our crowd right there, just let you know, not eating sugar. All the things I always tell people, you're going to love me in the beginning because I get a nice introduction and you're just going to hate me in the end. So just, you know, just be prepared for that. But all the things that we can do from a preventative standpoint, which is why I'm a fan of supplementation. Yes, I've formulated hundreds of products for the last 20 years, but I'm a believer in supplementation because the bottom line, there's modernization. You know, our food's changed, how we sleep's changed, you know, our circadian rhythm's thrown off. We are on our phones till late at night. I mean, you have to counter that. You just have to counter it. So just to finish that concept. And so when you have this microtubular unraveling, it literally starts at 21. Like it literally starts at 21. It's not something that happens when you're older. And so because it starts to lose its charge, it can't charge as much and it doesn't have that connection. And so I'm really big on educating people on something. It's called eicosanol 5-hydroxytryptamide 5. There you go. You just say that's a mouthful. And that is a supplement, but it's called EHT. And I just tell people it's the spelled backwards. And I can certainly give people more information, but the point is in taking something like that, or you'll hear people talk about ginkgo biloba. So ginkgo biloba is great because it gets circulation going in the brain and it pulls out heavy metals. And people talk about vitamin D's and vitamin B's and fortifiers for the brain and antioxidants because you want to really take care of that organ. And a lot of people, when I say organ, they're like, oh, I'm like, your brain is an organ, very much an organ. So we kind of take our brain for granted overall. We just expect it to be and stay the same. So to agree with you, yes, prevention is always better than correction. Yeah. And so I'm driving people to really take care of things like their gut, pre and probiotics, and the mitochondria, and their lymphatic system, and the microtubular.
Yeah. And I love this. I love sort of the angle you come at it, because we are now, I think we are entering a world, or we're in a world where we get that we have to look after our body, and it's a vessel that's taking us through this life, and we got to look after it because it's not going to last forever. It's going to run out, it's going to deteriorate, and we're just entering this understanding with the brain too. And it's so true. If our brain isn't functioning optimally, we're not functioning optimally. So why wouldn't we help it along? And I think a lot of people might take supplements because not necessarily with the education and the knowledge and the research that you've got to know which is which. It's like we take a multivit. So we might know that we need to do something. So we might take something we've heard somebody say, but we don't understand what we're doing by putting in, as you say, the diet and all the the toxins from the environment and our products, and all of these things are having an effect on the brain. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to deteriorate too.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, the most important thing I can reiterate for people, again, it's like, I could tell you 10 things to do. Grab onto what feels right and what feels doable. I don't want to, as I say, flood people's prefrontal cortex with things to do to take care of the brain. If it feels like too much, people don't do anything. I don't want to collapse that process. I just want to give people very simple things that they can do, and then gain more information. And, honestly, I'm available, you're available. They can gain more information as they go to it. But there's lots of different areas that we can touch on here while we're chatting. So
we've touched on sleep. So if you could kind of 10, but let's get practical. What are top tips we can do? So we've touched on sleep, so important. You've nibbled into sugar or diet, but I'll leave it with you. What are the things that people can do?
Okay, so obviously I want to talk a little bit about anxiety, because that's been a big state of the world in the last 15 months. Now, I want to let people know that for their brain, a lot of people are like, I have anxiety, I shouldn't have any anxiety. That's not the case. There's something called appropriate anxiety that is actually good for the brain. Now, not this kind of anxiety that we're experiencing, but there's appropriate anxiety. Don't expect your days to be like this every day. You want some of this. You want you want to have movement and fluidity. You want to feel love, and you want to feel quiet, and you want to maybe feel sad, and you watch movies sometimes to cry. You watch them to cry because you've watched them before. You're going to. So please, I just want people to understand, it's not about being Zen. It's not about being on top of the mountain and meditating 20 hours a day. It's waking up in the morning and meditating 20 minutes or 2 hours, if that's your thing, to deal with your anxiety. So I just really want to make that point clear. So appropriate anxiety is the name of the game. And this is a tax on the whole body, but it does make people tired. It's the one thing that makes people go like this, because it's really tough on the brain, because a lot of times when you're in anxiety, it's difficult to find solutions. So this is an arena where preventative medicine is the best medicine. And I'm going to share with you things that have been highly successful in the last 15 months and then some. So I've really been, I don't need to share that with you. I'm sure, or many of your listeners understand that meditation, even just quiet. And if you're not used to meditating, then I would suggest that people do a listening meditation where someone else is talking and taking them through that process. And don't even care if you get there. Don't even care. Just the fact that you mentally have allowed someone else to take over and tell you something to do, you're 90% there. So people are like, oh, I've meditated for years. And I go, do you still think of the grocery shopping list? And they're like, yeah. I go, I've been teaching it for 25 years and so do I. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, we're human. Just say thank you and go back to your state. Chanting is also a very big one. Meditation and chanting, very different, because chanting is like a mantra where, and what I love chanting and why I love chanting with people is because it doesn't allow much time to let in the brain, because you're chanting the same chant over and over again. So it kind of automatically shuts off that natter.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Laughing. I'll tell you, honestly, I've got to send a gift to Russell Peters and Wanda Sykes, because both those people have had me laughing. I did it again last night. I found this amazing Irish woman. I just, amazing Irish woman comedian. Before I went to bed last night, I gave myself a great laugh. I've been doing that for the last year for about 10 or 15 minutes
Yes.
to go to bed happy. I've been doing that.
One. I'm going to interject. I love it. Meditation, of course, yes. And laughing, yes. We have this thing in our house where we say we've only got a telly in the last few years, but we only watch funnies. We say,
Yes.
we watch a funny because we want to put ourselves, if you're going to spend time in this, we want to put ourselves in a state of laughter. And my daughter she's 10 now. Just in the last few days, because it's school holidays and both parents are a bit busy up to now, and we've allowed them to stay up and watch kind of an adult show. It's a PG. It's called Would I Lie to You? It's an English TV show, and it's just people tell stories and they have to guess if it's true or false, and it's just, we are rolling about in our chairs laughing, and at the end of the day it feels so good. And she now says, can we have a family Would I Lie to You? Because she knows, they know, don't they, even without doing it.
Yeah.
Feels good. And it's a great place to go to bed on. So sorry, just backing you up there. Love that.
No. It's absolutely fantastic when it comes to that. And then there's all the classic things like getting a massage. Now it may not be easy where you are, but there's all sorts of self massage, aromatherapy baths, bath salts. I had an aromatherapy bath salt bath every day for, I'm going to say 17, 18 years. I would do business meetings in the bath. Now, no one knew. I'm in the bath. I'm detoxing my body. I'm cleaning out my organs. I'm having a nice little aromatherapy. And I do a lot of meditation in the water. My son's name is Ocean. I'm an ocean swimmer. I do a lot of meditation in the water. I get in the bath. I do my candles. I have a little meditation. I drift off a little bit. I come back and I feel like I'm back at it. So there's some, yeah.
Well, that is a fantastic tip for now as well, because come on, we're in the Zoom era. I mean, if we can get away with pajamas on the bottom, we can get away with bath time. I reckon bath time meetings are here to stay.
Absolutely. And the one thing that we're going to talk a little bit about, because when I was studying the brain and when I was beginning to study the brain, we weren't on this unit as much as possible. We weren't on our unit. And the big concern was teenagers being on this unit and what they were watching and how it was really deterring their ability to focus and concentrate. For adults, we call that brain fog, right? We call that brain fog, which is one of the reasons why I believe in supplementation and good diet, is because of brain fog. But this kind of thing is making the brain very tired. So 95% of people are an arm's length away from their phone 24 hours a day. 95% of people are an arm's length away from their phone 24 hours a day. It's beside their bed, or it's in their bed, or it's beside them, or people literally start to have anxiety. And I caught myself doing this, leaving the house, going for dinner. And I was like, oh, I forgot my phone. And then I actually have to ask myself, do you need it?
Yes.
Like turning the phone over has become a form of self-love. Get that? Yeah. It's been a form of brain health is going, whoop.
Yeah. Switch it down. Yeah. I heard there's a great Professor Andrew Huberman at Stanford Uni. I absolutely love him. He's got this podcast out. He was saying the other day that they think that there's an area in the brain that's now developed that's kind of like a map of our mobile phone. Like our mobile phone is literally becoming an extension of us. If you think about it, it just is. It's like a little hard drive. It's got memory. It's got all our personal details. It's got of family stories, and it's always, as you said, 95% of the time, it's an arm's length away. And I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it, that there's now an areas developed for mobile phone. I mean, I don't know. It's what it is, but we're changing. Our minds are literally changing because of technology.
Absolutely. And so I think like anything, you know, I worked, look, I've done a few treatments on people, and, you know, they came in, and our goal, I had 18 staff, and we had one mission. And our mission, no matter what people came in with, it didn't matter if they came in with stress issues or physical issues or divorce issues or migraine issues, or I can't stand my kids issues, or whatever it is. We didn't care. Our one mission, and we met every single month. I had that studio for 27 years, and our one mission was to bring people back to themselves. Because if you can bring people back to themselves, 90% of the time, they will come up with their own solutions to their own problems.
Yes.
You know that. You guys do that in large quantities with people meditating, and all of a sudden they have revelations. They're like, oh, I'm back to myself, right? So what you said just makes sense. Absolutely. I have no doubt that things are not rewiring, because we're always rewiring. Yeah. We're always rewiring, right? And let me talk about the food. Talk about the food, because you mentioned about sugar, and you mentioned about, so I've been dairy-free and sugar-free and wheat and gluten-free for 30 years. And it is possible to raise your kids that way. I'm going to just tell you right now, it is possible, because I did. Yeah. That's where I think a lot of times when you talk about being a pioneer, or people used to call me a hippie, I'd walk into work and they would call me Rainbow. They'd call me Shirley MacLaine, and not in the most loving ways. They're like, here comes Shirley MacLaine, or my family. Honestly, I love them all dearly, but I was not. They were like, well, oh, by the way, Deb, the peas were, Thanksgiving, the peas were put in the microwave. I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know. And it was a little derogatory. It was a little throw at, right? And I said, it's very interesting, because back then it wasn't so cool. It was pioneering. People did kind of go like this. And now people are like, can you help me? Can you give me some information? So there's been an evolution, but sugar is a big one. You talk to anybody. I mean, we're not even talking the brain. We're talking, all organs, all functions. We're talking about sugar is probably one of the biggest poisons and toxins in the body, period. It's a manipulative additive, it's a manipulative additive. You look in your foods, and sometimes when did you have to add sugar to fruit cocktail? Someone, please tell me why you need to add sugar to fruit cocktail. And because it's a very addictive, it plays on the same nerve in the nervous system as cocaine.
Yes.
As cocaine.
Another thing I learned from Professor Huberman, to credit him, even if you can't, this makes sense, right? Even if you can't taste it, the addictive mechanism is going on, which is why they're putting it in fruit cocktail, which is why they're putting it in barbecue sauce, or it's everywhere, because once you leave it, your body wants more of that chemical, and you don't know that's going on. Yeah.
The same nerve is cocaine and nicotine. And we know how hard it is for people to quit smoking. Quitting sugar is very, very difficult for people. So obviously not good for the brain. And also, I'm not a big fan. I went gluten-free because I was not well. I just wasn't well in my 20s. And thank goodness, a woman who happened to be my boss at the time recommended I went to her naturopath. I was like 25. I'm like, a natural what? Like a natural. So that's 30 years ago, without giving away my age. And so you can do the math. I didn't even know what that was. And so he was one of the first person to take me off sugar. He also took me off gluten. Now I'm going to tell you, 30 years ago, everything tasted like cardboard. There was nothing gluten fun. There was gluten free.
Yeah. You wouldn't have had the options that we have today. So you didn't.
No. Yeah, it was kind of hardcore. But gluten creates inflammation. Inflammation is 80% of disease. There are books, like there's the Grain Brain book, and there's many doctors that talk about how they believe that gluten creates inflammation in the brain, and they believe it has a relationship with Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And so if you can get rid of inflammation out of your body, these inflammagens, we talk about them, why people want to eat antioxidants, things like blueberries. And, a lot of times people will use that as an excuse to have some red wine, but, really, honestly, just being able to get things like gluten out of your diet. I mean, if people have tackled sugar and gluten, if that's all they took away from this, from a brain standpoint, never mind your health and your body standpoint, they're way ahead of the game. And it's a gluten-free world, people. I mean, it's a gluten-free world. There's gluten-free trade shows, there's gluten-free this, there's gluten-free that. Just make sure they're not full of sugar.
Yeah. So I think that's great. And we're not, just saying that, as you said earlier, just having the awareness and then information. And then if you want to take that and go and research it and do what's right for you, do that. But just having that information, I think is gold. Yeah.
I gotta tell you, that was a game changer for me. I went a year off all the gluten and sugar, and then a few other things that came up in my testing. I never felt better in my life, like to the point where I would stay that way for the next 30 years and raise my children that way. Like, that's how much of a difference and an impact it made on my life. And we know, particularly, like I said, I had 2 children with learning challenges. Clean diet, even things like FDC number 3 and FDC number 5, and finding out that they're neurotoxic. Well, I mean, I'm not a big candy person at all, but look, there's candies and they're different colors. And where are those colors coming from? There's a big food color thing that went around probably about 10 years ago. People started to really understand food coloring and food additives.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for going there. Because what I was going to ask, and I'm aware of your time, and I know that you've got to.
Oh, it's okay.
But what I wanted to ask was, what have you done? And you just started to that. So what difference have you seen in your kids' lives, in your life, and what did you do that had the biggest impact? Because you've been on this 30-year journey of trying different things.
Right.
Tell me about your impacts and what you found, and then leave us with your top 1 or 3 tips that people could do based on your experience.
Wow. Okay. So remind me on that. So for me, I have to say that watching my children being raised from a very clean environment. And I mean, again, I'm going to say, like, I took the picking on, not letting them have sugar at Easter. You guys are on Easter break, right? Like, my family could just never get over that. They're like, well, here, it's just got a little bit of sugar. So one of the things, honestly, that I found, I think for me as a parent of some kids that had learning challenges, is that keeping the brain optimal gave us the biggest shot at recovery and repair. Having my children, just knowing that I was doing the best that I could to keep them healthy. It doesn't mean that I took their learning challenges away. It just meant that to be able to get them sleeping as much as possible, getting them eating the right foods as much as possible. And I think a big one with my children was laying track on self-care.
Yeah.
It really was. Like, my son, flipped, he's 17 now. So he flipped somewhere around 15. He's like, well, I want to eat real cheese. And I'm like, he kind of went through this flip. And my daughter went through that process too, when my daughter moved out. And then she came back, because they do that. And when she came back, she looked in my fridge. She was about 15 pounds more than she was when she left. Right. Okay. No big deal. Because she decided to change her diet back to, or what was considered normal. She came back and she was looking in my fridge and she's like, there's nothing to eat in here. And I said, same food in there than when you left the first time is still in there. We didn't change our food. You changed your food. Yeah. She came back within the second month. She was exercising. She was losing weight. She was feeling good. And it was such a great organic experience for her to go back into what society was saying normal and coming back and eating these foods. And honestly, it was a game changer. It was a game changer for her in that experience. And for me, I'm 50, I'm well into my 50s. I'm 56, and I don't experience some of the things that fellow colleagues, not necessarily in this arena, experience. I honestly don't lose my glasses. I don't wonder where my keys are. Like I don't wonder where my keys are. I know where my paper is. My desk might be a little paperish. I know where my papers are. I don't gap in my conversation. I don't forget. I mean, if anything, it's actually reversed. When I started really cleaning up my brain, I started remembering things it was like almost a little scary. I was like, oh my gosh, this and that and this and that. So I don't walk into the kitchen and wonder why I'm there. I don't have those lapses that I see my friend. And I have people do you know what people say to me all the time? I cannot tell you. People go, where do you get the energy, girl? And I'm like, where do I get the energy? This is natural energy. I'm not taking away from myself. I don't even care if I optimize what this is. My brain for sure isn't the age of a 56-year-old woman. I've done a lot of age reversal, and I've done a lot of work with the mitochondria, but people are constantly, where do you get the energy? Where do you get the energy? I'm like, I'm not tired. I'm not sluggish. Honestly, God's truth. And I'm a God's girl. I've had one flu in 30 years. One.
Wow.
My daughter's 28, my son's 17. They've both only ever had one flu each. I can say one flu before my daughter left home in her 20s, and my son's 17, and he's only ever had one flu, and they were about a year and a half old. That's the benefit.
Yeah.
That's the benefit. I got a rock star immune system.
Yeah, and you look amazing. I mean, if anyone needs an illustration, evidence, we just need to look at you. Amazing.
Aww.
I love that you said it's basically cutting the crap. So
Yes.
cutting the crap, cutting the toxins, and
Yes.
the supplement. But I even love the way you explain supplementation as, look at what we're doing, look at the modernized world. So it's just countering. Yeah. So,
if you're really stressed, you go get a massage. If you're really stressed, you go get yoga. You do something, you got to counter it.
Yeah. If you breathe in fumes all day, go walk in the forest.
Exactly.
So cutting out the sugar, cutting out the dairy.
A couple things that I want to bring up. One is sports, right? Because people love their sport. We know that there's sports that are very kind of more challenging, like soccer, hitting on the head, football, hockey, lacrosse. Those kind of things are more, boxing. That's tough. And look, I am a boxer. I'm not a big boxer. I box for sport, meaning I box for exercise. I don't get in the ring with anybody. And so there's sports that are not as good for the brain, right? I'd never let anyone punch my head. I just do boxing for sport. So we all know that. I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't do them. We just know they're not brain supportive. But the brain supportive sports that are really, really great, one for the overall body, the best sport for the overall body is swimming, but ping pong and racket sports are the best. Ping pong's the number one sport for the brain. Number one.
Because you got to be, your reaction time and your mind, body's got to be in sync.
Yes.
And
I go play.
It brings you
Yes,
you've almost got to know where that ball's going before it's gone there. Like, I love that aspect.
Yeah. So that's a great sport. I actually go play squash by myself. I go in and play squash by myself. So those are great. So that's great sports. I want to address the alcohol question. I get address the alcohol question all the time. Alcohol does shrink your brain. Yeah. Being overweight does shrink your brain almost sometimes to 30%. Yeah. So yes, do I have the odd glass of wine? I'm not a purist. I have the occasional glass of wine. I feel it the next day. I know what I'm doing. I hydrate and take some brain supplements before I go to bed. But yes, it does affect your brain. Alcohol affects your brain. THC affects your brain considerably more than alcohol. And so just, yes, the answer to those are an astounding yes. So what?
While you're there, caffeine, where do you sit with caffeine?
Well, I don't drink caffeine. I haven't had caffeine in 30 years either. It showed up as one of my allergies. People have all sorts of arenas around that. The big thing for me from a holistic body standpoint is every time you drink 8-ounce glass of caffeine, whether it's tea or coffee, you have dehydrated your body. You have by 8 ounces. So every glass you drink, you have to rehydrate 8 ounces of water just to come to balance. Caffeine also is an addiction. So it just really depends on where you're at with that. Yeah. Some people talk about good caffeines, like from green teas and things like that, that have antioxidants. Sure. And we could have this debate all day. Do I drink coffee? No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, closing words, Deb. One thing that, I mean, you've given us so many, but if someone said to you, I just need a quick, give me the best thing I can do for my brain, what would you give them?
Oh, honestly, outside of supplementation, I mean, honestly, I think supplementation is the easiest for our modern world. Outside of supplementation, if I had to pick one, it would be sugar. It would be sugar. I'm fighting with sugar and gluten. I'm really fighting with sugar and gluten.
You can have
I get to have the two. So I would say diet. I would say diet.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, because this was about the brain. So I love
Yes.
that we're connected, you
We're
know.
connected.
And
Yes.
so yeah, you've given us so much in there, Deb, and I'm going to get some info off you and post them underneath your video. So we'll get the links to the supplementations you've talked about and the various, maybe some studies and things like that, so people know where to go for more information. But I want to really thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom and your 30 years plus of research in this area to give us practical tips that we can actually take away and implement to help us up our limit. You know, if your limit is, I'm exhausted by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a load of ways where we can break past that. And then how much life have you got back? You know, if you can't sleep, if you're sleep deprived, we can delve into that. That affects your life, right? We get some portion of our life back. So, and as we know, you know, sleep deprivation affects your emotions and all of that, affects your family, it affects your business. We were talking earlier about how all of this information, it doesn't just affect you on a health level, it's all interrelated. So your business, your family, your relationships, and the length of time you're going to live is all affected by the stuff we've talked about. So thank you so much, Deb, for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting on this summit. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and we will chat soon. Take care and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.